Today I'm making a classic Japanese miso ramen with chashu pork belly. Now the Chinese may have invented ramen originally, but over the past century the Japanese have taken the dish, perfected it, and really popularized it around the world. Now it's time for me to show you how to make it in your kitchen. What's happening, guys? I am Jet Tila and this is Ready Jet Cook, where I show you how to make some of my favorite Asian dishes from pantry to plate. Let's get cooking. All right, miso ramen. So I'm gonna talk about miso and pork belly when we get into the kitchen, but we gotta spend some time on kombu. So this is a giant kelp leaf, grows in the ocean. You take it and you dry it and it becomes this. That drying process creates this natural sea salt. It's been done this way by fishermen for 1,000 years. The amazing flavor this gives is actually what MSG was synthesized to actually taste like. But this is savory in its most natural form. We are using kombu for the savory profile, and it really is the essence of umami. The word umami literally translates to the spirit of flavor. That's how important it is, and that's what kombu is gonna give us. I'll show you how to use it in the kitchen. Pork belly, miso. So for the miso ramen, I need pork belly. Make sure to get skinless pork belly because those skins will not break down in time. It'll be chewy like rubber bands. And also, I'm using red miso, also known as aka miso. There's 3 levels of fermentation: white, yellow, red. Basically, the more fermented, the more pungent, the more salty. I'm going with red because it has the most flavor, the most punch, and I think it's super delicious. So, lots to do, but we're gonna make it very simple. There are 4 very popular styles of ramen, and they're basically classified by their broths. So first, we're gonna be making miso ramen today, which uses miso as the primary ingredient and flavoring. The second would be shio, which is the Japanese word for salt. So salt basically flavors the broth, which obviously has bones in it. And then there's shoyu, which is the Japanese word for soy sauce. So you have a dark soy sauce broth. And then there's tonkotsu broth, which is a very fatty bone broth. All very popular. Today we're gonna be making a miso broth, and we're actually gonna start with a soy sauce marinade to cook the chashu, which is the pork belly, which is the same marinade which we're gonna marinate those eggs. I'm gonna teach you how to make those really cool ramen eggs that are just soft in the middle and coated with soy sauce. So in a cold saucepan, we are going to start with sake. And you know, a lot of Japanese chefs work in formulas, right? Meaning I'm gonna go about 2 parts sake to 1 part soy, which makes it really easy to kind of think about measuring, and then the rest will be sugar because I want a balance of flavors. We've got the flavorings, and now we're gonna need the aromatics. So the aromatics for this soy broth is going to be ginger. And whenever you're cutting ginger for a marinade or a quick broth, we don't really have to worry about, you know, perfect cuts. We just want to expose as much surface area as possible. And with scallions, I'm just gonna chop these in half because we're gonna end up removing these later. Ginger, scallions, and then finally a little water to dilute and give me more base for the bellies and the eggs. So we're gonna get the soy broth overheat. We wanna dissolve that sugar, and then we're gonna divide it in half. Half this broth is going to be for the pork, and the other half is gonna marinate the eggs. And I'm gonna show you how to make those really cool ramen eggs that you see. It's a very fun little tip. What I'm gonna do is insert a little pin inside the bottom part of the egg. And when I mean bottom, the wide side, because an egg kind of tapers into kind of like a point. We want that bottom side. And all I'm gonna do is take a little pin to the top of that and then poke a little hole. There's a natural little air pocket in there. And what I'm gonna do is relieve the pressure from that air pocket. And also this allows the hot water to get in there to help kind of poach that egg out. So that's all we're doing. We're gonna do that to every single egg, and you won't lose any egg that way. That's gonna get the hot water in there and allow you to make a perfectly boiled 6-minute egg. Once I poke the air hole in, I'm just going to lower the eggs into boiling water for 6 minutes. That's gonna give you that soft yolk in the middle without the yolk setting up. And I'm actually dropping these eggs right in from the refrigerator. No need to room temp them. That soft, creamy center of the egg is a 6-minute egg from a cold egg in the fridge. Eggs are cooking away for 6 minutes, and I'm gonna separate half this soy broth now to marry those peeled eggs in, and then use the other half to start poaching the pork belly. I just warmed this broth enough to dissolve the sugar. I'm gonna be pulling half of it out for the eggs and cooling it. All right, so soy broth is good for eggs. I'm gonna start working on the pork belly. I'm trying to be thoughtful about order of operations. I wanted to get to the raw pork at the end so I don't cross-contaminate. And we're gonna start poaching this in the liquid. You may see pork belly in ramen that's rolled. You can absolutely roll this and tie it and poach it, but I actually like the planks when you see the planks of pork belly. You may know the word chashu from Chinese roast pork. It's the same concept, except this is the Japanese method of braising chashu versus roasting it, as they would in Cantonese cuisine. These need to braise for about 2.5 hours. You have two choices. They can go stovetop, or you can cover them tightly with foil, put it in like a 325 oven for about 2.5 hours, and you're golden. So we're set up for miso broth, but first I want to spend a second on the eggs. After 6 minutes, these eggs are done, and what I want to do is stop the cooking process as fast as possible, which means an ice bath. So these will go into the ice bath. We'll let those chillax a bit until they are room temp, and then we'll peel them. So here in the center of my board, I've got the broth that we made that the pork belly is simmering in currently. I have peeled the eggs that we've cooked for 6 minutes, and look at how gorgeous these eggs come out when you poke that little hole and you cook it just for 6 minutes. So these are gonna swim right in that soy broth. And what it's really doing at the end of the day is just creating flavor for that egg and making them nice and beautiful, because after they live in that broth for, and I would recommend at least 10 hours, check that out, man. Look at the difference in color. You can't oversteep because you're not cooking anymore. You're just creating a beautiful, what I call a soy ramen egg. We're gonna need the soy eggs in a minute to finish this ramen. For now, let me actually get you into the miso ramen broth. I've got 3 pots on the stove. I just wanna explain what they are. This is the pork belly that's simmering away. I've got a center pot to actually cook the ramen noodles, and this is the little saucepan we're gonna be building our ramen broth in. I'm heating this saucepan up. I'm gonna put just a tiny bit of high temperature oil in there just to saute the pork up. So ramen is supposed to be a rich, luxurious dish. I'm always looking for a fattier ground pork. I like to brown this pork because it builds more layers of flavor. Caramelizing basically pulled all the sugars and those meaty, smoky notes out. So this is going to be the base of our ramen. We've got a lot of things going on in here. So I'm gonna toast up these shiitake mushrooms. This is gonna beef up even more savoriness. I want garlic for that kind of deep earthiness now. I'm gonna take the widest part of my knife, smash that flat. You have to keep in mind, everything that's going into this ramen broth is not gonna be pulled out. So make sure you cut things fine enough to sit in this ramen broth, because we are not straining this out at all. So I wanna get this all sauteed up. All right, I'm gonna be adding ginger now, and I want the ginger pretty fine, so I'm gonna use my handy box grater plastic tip. Just take some plastic, lay it over the small smooth holes. Don't even bother peeling your ginger. You just wanna grate it right onto the plastic. And this works amazingly because all the fiber ends up here and all my usable ginger pulp is right there. I grab that and marry that in there. I mean, as you can see, I'm building layers of flavor. The mushrooms, the ginger, the garlic, and now the scallions. I mean, I'm only getting so much amazing flavor out of there. So I need scallions for the broth, and I'm gonna want some scallions for garnish. So if there was smell-o-vision, you would be getting roast pork and ginger and garlic and now scallions. Check out the pan with me. The whole idea here was to cook that pork and really start blooming all the flavors in this pan, but I don't want this broth to come to a boil. So I'm gonna reduce my heat and start adding my liquids now. And the base liquid here is going to be chicken stock. You can absolutely make your own chicken stock, but I'm using a box stock. Going for a bit of water. So this is the point we bring in our red miso. When you buy your miso, I really want you to taste the miso on its own because I think it's important to understand what each ingredient brings to the dish. And the best way for me to describe miso flavor, first I would say it tastes like soy sauce because it shares so many ingredients with soy sauce, but I think it has more body to it, right? And it has even a deeper savoriness without having all that salt. You can see how rich this broth is becoming. I'm gonna add some sesame oil for aroma, not too much. And I like the spice of chili garlic sauce. So with the chili garlic sauce, you can see the connection between cultures with chili garlic sauce, with soy sauce, the ginger, and the noodles. It's a pretty amazing story, kind of similar to sushi because sushi was actually a Chinese way to preserve fish, and then the Japanese took it and made it this amazing phenomenon. This is mirin, which is a sweetened rice wine, which gives you a very kind of nice tone of sweetness. I'm gonna be adding white pepper, salt, and then one more hit of sweetness to balance out all those flavors, just a little bit of sugar. I know it seems like there's a lot of ingredients, but ramen I think is part alchemy, part art, as much as it is, a culinary feat. The last ingredient I'm gonna add is our kombu. I want you to remember this. Boiling is the enemy of kombu, so there's a specific reason I'm putting it in at the end. As the temperature rises, I do want to cook all the ingredients in here, but I don't want to cook the kombu too much because the flavors you're trying to get out of kombu are those outer layers of that kind of dried natural sea salt. You don't want to get down into the green because it starts to taste a little too strong. Let me show you what the kombu looks like and the actual parts of it that I'm trying to extract flavor from. So this is a big kelp leaf, and as you can see, these dry, beautiful, almost sea salt patches on here, that and the outer layer is the flavor I'm trying to extract. Whenever you cook any of my recipes, taste the ingredients by themselves to understand what they add to the dish. I mean, it's like part sea salt and amazing amount of savoriness, and that's what we're going for right here. So I'm just gonna break a bit off, and I'm gonna add the kombu to the broth, and we're just gonna let that simmer. Remember, the enemy of kombu is boiling. So this is gonna simmer for a few minutes. I'm gonna cook my noodles off, and I'm gonna pull this amazing dish together. Ramen bridges two culinary cultures that I'm fascinated with. One I come from, which is the Chinese, and the other I grew up cooking, which was the Japanese. Chinese American kid going to Japanese culinary school and cooking Japanese food. This is the dish that bridges it. I've always been in search of the perfect chashu. And in my Chinese side makes red roasted sweet chashu. The Japanese training has taught me how to make, this perfect ramen chashu. When it comes to making broth, all these ingredients are shared between two cultures. It's very similar to cultural anthropology, right? I'm obsessed with understanding the cultures better through trying to find the best version of the dishes. The miso ramen broth has simmered for about 10 to 20 minutes. I have noodle boiling water going. I want to cut my chashu and get that ready. Look at that. Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about right there. So with the chashu, you could actually cool it and hold it in the fridge and cut it as you're using it. I'm gonna be using it fresh right out of the pot. And what I'm gonna do now is just slice a few tiles off to prepare it for the bowl. And I'll probably do 3 to 5. So 4 is a bad luck number in China and Japan. I can't help it, I'm sorry. Whenever there's chashu, I need to eat it. Noodle water's going. These are fresh ramen noodles. You can find them at the store. If you're using dry, that's okay too. If you're in a pinch, any egg or wheat noodle is gonna be fine. I'm gonna load an order into my noodle basket. That's gonna go right in. So these noodles will cook for about 2 minutes, and I want them on the al dente side. So we're getting very close to plate up. I wanna set up my bowl and my garnishes. This is your last chance to finalize your ramen broth, so give it a good taste and adjust as you need here. There are all those layers of the herbs, spice, and sweetness, so it's gotta be a very balanced flavor. Noodles are in, we're gonna ladle in the warm broth. And I'm gonna leave the kombu and the mushrooms in the broth. I'm not serving those, but those are gonna continue to give flavor to the broth. Let's lay in the tiles of pork belly. I'm gonna show you that soy egg. And I've actually taken these out of the fridge and let them warm up a little bit. Don't put them in the ramen super cold. So I'm just gonna slide my knife in. That's what I'm talking about. I'm gonna tuck those in. A little bit of bean sprout, scallions, and I like to finish with nori. And just kind of like a little deck of cards, I'm just gonna tuck it right in there. Just a reminder, friends, this recipe is better the next day, meaning the chashu can be cooled, served the next day, the eggs also marinated for the next day, and the longer this broth goes, the better. And you've actually learned 3 recipes in one. The ramen eggs are fantastic for breakfast. The chashu can be for anything for noodles, fried rice, or eaten over white rice. And this broth is just a fantastic base for anything you want to eat with it. Don't be jealous. The crew is so mad right now, you have no idea. So there it is, we have made spicy miso ramen with homemade chashu together. I hope I've inspired you to tackle this dish, or if you're out eating ramen next time, please order the miso ramen. We'll see you guys next time on Ready, Jet, Cook.